Ready? You ready?
I'm freaking ready. I'm so excited.
Like I've been waiting for this.
I have. Okay.
Let me tie my shoe. Oh shit. I have to look the part.
Alex,
Mm-hmm.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Take 2.
Alrighty.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Alex, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Always happy to have you. If you guys didn't know, we've actually already had Alex on on a previous podcast episode. So I highly recommend you guys go and listen to that first before listening to this episode. Or if you want to listen to this and then go back, it's going to help connect a lot of dots for you. There's going to be a little bit of overlap, and we're not going to provide a lot of context from the first podcast. So it'll just help make sense of things. I believe the title of that one is The True Definition of Mental Toughness. That sounded right.
That sounded right. That sounded really good.
You'll definitely find it. It says Alex's name on there, Alex Barene, so you'll get there. And it's not like I have that many episodes out currently.
We'll find
Another thing is, if you are only listening to this on the audio version, the podcast version, there is a YouTube version, and I also highly recommend that you watch that, because again, it's going to just help with some of the context, because we are cutting between some audio and video clips that we took. I came in a few weeks prior and did a session with Alex, mental performance session with him, kind of a mock-up session. So definitely go check out the YouTube video on this. It'll just help you put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
You have some disclaimers?
Yeah, a couple disclaimers. First, yes, do what Gabbie said. Go check out the other episodes. Definitely watch the video. It'll help kind of, like Gabbie said, bridge the gap, help make some more connections and add more context, and just some more, added info for you. Disclaimers on my end to cover my butt legally and ethically. The session that Gabbie and I did that we will be sharing some clips from was a mock session for your educational and kind of entertainment purposes, and no clinical assessment was done during that session. And then also less of an ethical kind of cover my butt legally situation here, but just to note that every session with each client that I have is very different. So although this is meant to portray what a session might look like if you came into my office on any given day, it might look very different. So where you and I were talking about values and committed action and all that kind of more life skills kind of stuff, if you came in on another day, or if you saw a session with another client, we might be talking about goal setting or becoming more confident on the field or doing imagery or visualization work. So not how every session will look. Just note that that happened to be the particular content that we were talking about that day. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Covers my butt too. So We've covered all of our bases, I believe.
We've covered all the butts.
Yes.
The butts are covered. Okay, sweet.
I'm gonna kind of let Alex lead this podcast because he led the session, so it kind of makes more sense. But before we do that, I have a question I want to ask, and something I want to start doing with all my guests.
Okay.
I just think it's like kind of fun, good check-in to see where everyone's at. But how's your mental health?
My mental health. Oh no, it's good. My mental health is good. I like to do kind of a check-in whenever somebody asks me that question, or even just like asking myself that question of like taking stock of like, how are my relationships? How is my physical health? How's my like general self-care? Like, am I doing the dishes or letting them sit in the sink for days? Am I like making sure that my bed is made in the morning? Like, am I doing the things that I know are gonna make me more healthy? And so, when I kind of take stock and check those things off the list, there's a pretty good correlation with when I'm doing those things. My mental health is a lot better. I happen to be in a patch where I'm doing those things and the relationships are good and I'm not letting the like dishes sit in the sink and I'm doing the laundry and doing all the little like self-care things. So yeah, I think overall mental health is pretty good, you know. Of course there are like minor stressors, but yeah, I think we're doing pretty good. Can't complain. The sunshine always makes me much more happy. So
I didn't realize like seasonal depression is a real thing until I moved to Oregon. I'm like,
yeah.
okay.
Well, funnily enough, I grew up in coastal Washington, so rain like 300 days a year, maybe. That might be an exaggeration, but a lot. Like way too many. And I never like had any seasonal affective anything until like maybe 1 or 2 years ago, and it just started hitting hard. And I'm like, man, like it's made such a big difference, the sun being out the past few weeks now. So much better.
It like makes you forget that it was ever rainy and cold, which is like crazy.
It's not good because then you hit winter again. And you're like, why do I live here?
Yes.
But,
well, sometimes by the end of summer, I'm like, okay, I wouldn't mind
like
if
a little
it dropped a
rain.
few temperatures.
Yeah.
I could put on some sweats and a hoodie. That'd be great.
Oh yeah.
And then that happens for 6 months. And
Oh,
you're like,
agreed. Like one of my favorite things is going back into the closet and getting like the big jacket out. I do like that.
Yeah.
I do like that.
So
Seasons are good.
yeah, seasons are good. But this sun has been very, very nice.
How's your mental health?
Thank you for asking. I would say if I could rate it out of like a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably like an 8.
Okay.
Which is good.
That is good.
The only reason I think that it could be better is I feel like I'm really understimulated right now because I'm kind of in between jobs. Specifically, I start a new position in July, which I'm really excited about. And in the meantime, I've really been focusing on the Athlete Confidential. And then I have a part-time job, which has been phenomenal. I really enjoy those things, but I find myself having a lot of free time. And when I have that free time, I'm not always doing the best things for myself. I'm doing a lot of Netflix binging.
Yeah.
Not great. But I have recently started to like build better habits to come out of that, which we'll probably cover actually in the episode. Overall, mental health is good.
Good. I like that question. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to dive into
Let's
into some
do
stuff?
it.
Well,
maybe we should paint the picture first.
okay, you paint the picture.
Okay, I'll paint
You
the
seem like-
picture.
yeah, you paint the picture.
So I came into Alex's office. I came pretty much unprepared. I didn't really know what we were going to be doing, which is how I kind of like to experience things. I kind of like the authenticity of just not knowing what's going to happen and like the genuine reaction that you have off of that.
Yeah.
So I came in, we sat down kind of like how we are now. There was a whiteboard. Maybe I'll put like a little image of it. Great little setup. And we kind of dove right into it.
Yeah.
Alex just went immediately in with a hard-hitting question and we got real deep real quick. But I loved it. It was great.
Good. Yeah. We we don't tend to beat around the bush, you know. These are important questions to get into. When you first came in, I know that you said you like to kind of come in and let things kind of unfold without any real expectations, but was there any like apprehension or anything like that? What was the like general emotional landscape before coming in?
I don't know if there was apprehension. I think curiosity is probably the best way to describe it. I was just really curious about what it would actually look like, how I was gonna feel, what I was gonna get out of it. Yeah, and I think I'm like a pretty open book in general, so that's nice for me because I don't have like the social anxiety of not wanting to talk about certain things or feeling like certain things are off limits. So I wasn't really nervous that you might ask a question that was like triggering in any way, and if it was, and honestly, my worst fear is I was going to start crying.
Yeah.
I was also like, if I do, that's fine.
Yeah, that is fine. That's this is the space to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I didn't. There were no tears shed. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember.
I don't think so. There wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that those are all pretty normal experiences beforehand. And certainly if I were a client seeking out some help in that regard, I would have the same exact kind of thoughts going forward. Was like, I'm at this point in my life, I'm happy enough to share, but I'm like, well, I don't know what the questions are going to be asked, blah, blah, blah. So I think those are all pretty normal for any new client, or anyone who's new to mental performance coaching. It's normal to not quite know what to expect. And
What do you do if someone is kind of reluctant to open up?
it depends on the client. So if they're a younger client, sometimes we'll just take 5 to 10 minutes and just play like a silly game that has nothing to do with what we're actually going to talk about. Sometimes those kind of things work. Asking like silly icebreaker questions usually helps. But to be honest with you, sometimes it takes 2-3 sessions before we really start like doing some groundbreaking work, which can be frustrating, but I think it's part of the process. And like on a personal note, like I remember going to some counseling sessions growing up, and I was like, no way, like I'm not telling you, I was a pretty shy kid and I didn't want to talk about it anyway. And so I empathize with those who come in and just maybe don't know quite how to answer, or maybe don't really want to. But there's some things we can do, some fun games or some silly little questions that really have nothing to do with what content we're talking about that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I left, because I was like, I know not everyone's like me. Not everyone is so willing to
For sure.
express and to speak. And I've kind of always been that way.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe not so much like with the emotional part of it. I would kind of be able to be like very open, but like almost detach myself from the emotional side. Now I'm better at that piece. But I was just like, I wonder what it would be like to be in a session where they're not so open, and how much patience you have to have.
A lot. It can be like a little frustrating. But luckily we learned those skills in counseling class to be able to kind of try to maneuver around as best we can, and just have positive regard regardless of the situation, and just kind of try and meet people where they're at. One thing I will say is I try to kind of mirror the client's energy. So like for instance with you, like you're a pretty laid back, like chill, open kind of person. So you'll probably see like in some of the clips that I'm not super like bubbly and fun, and so trying to kind of gauge where people are in terms of like how golden retriever-ish they are, or maybe how like chill and relaxed they are, and meet them there can help. It's a fine balance. And especially I find that if I come out of the gates a little too hot, people maybe are not so receptive to that as you were. But I think I had a feeling you could handle it pretty well. So yeah,
I handle it.
pretty well. Pretty cool. I guess that's kind of the beforehand stuff. So let's get into the session. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the first question I asked you. What?
I think it was just like kind of like, why are you like, what are you struggling with?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, Gabbie, thanks for coming in today. I know we've had this kind of scheduled for a bit, so I'm sure, hopefully, to make my job easier, you've come in with like some things to talk about. Some clients come in and it's just like I have to pry answers. I don't think you're that kind of person.
No, I'm an open book.
Sweet. Which I appreciate a lot. Let's I don't know, there's always the classic opener of tell me a bit about yourself. But I think maybe we can go a little bit deeper than that. I know you a little bit, right? We have some previous history, but I know from our conversations before, it seems like kind of the main struggle is being this like transition away from competitive sport. So, but I only know very surface level.
Mhm.
So just tell me like a bit more about that, when you stopped playing, how that transition's been, and we can kind of dive in from there.
Most people come in here for a specific reason. They don't always know it. I think maybe, yeah, coming into a session knowing exactly what you want help with helps the coach kind of create a better roadmap for you as to how we're going to navigate that issue. So we were able to get some pretty good work done, I felt, within one session. Sometimes it might take 2-3 sessions before we get into the nitty-gritty of what the problem is and then how to go about it. We started with doing some like values clarification stuff and coming up with a list of 3 to 5 values, the things that are most important to you, kind of have always been there, and things that you foresee always being important to you. Will you remind me what those values were?
Yes, I have them written down. So my original values, which I've changed one of them,
Okay.
were community, growth, inspiration, challenge, and stability. And I switched out stability for joy
Ooh.
because I just feel like, yes, sometimes I value stability, but sometimes I enjoy chaos. That sounds so like dark, but
That was cool though. I liked it.
I don't even mean it in that way. Like I like to be stimulated constantly. I like new, I like fresh. So stability and chaos don't exactly align with each other, and I think I value both of those things, just maybe at different points and
Yeah.
depending on what they are.
Yeah.
So I replaced it with joy because it's like I do value just doing something that makes me happy.
Yeah, the things that bring you like contentment. And that might not always be stability.
Exactly.
That might get like a little boring, and it might not always be chaos either. Sometimes that's too much. So maybe, yeah, finding balance between those things and
Yes.
finding enjoyment in things you do. Which leads me to another question. We talked about your values. The enjoyment thing. Golf, the Athlete Confidential. What have you been able to find more fulfillment, more enjoyment in those areas after the session upon like reflection of things we talked about?
Yeah, actually. So speaking of golf specifically, I was really starting to think like why do I actually enjoy this activity? Because I'm terrible at it. And usually when I do anything remotely athletic, if I'm not good at it, I'm the type of person that's very confident in my athletic abilities. And if I'm not like top 3 best people in the room, I'm like, I'm not going to do it then. Which is a little bit dramatic, but like, you get the idea. I don't like being bad at things that involve athletic ability. But golf, I really enjoy it. Even when I literally like whiff a ball, I can't even I get a little bit frustrated.
Yeah.
But overall, I have a good time just being out there, learning something new, being in the sun, whatever it is. And so I started to think about like, why do I feel that way? And I just realized like, I think when I started golf, I put zero pressure on myself because I kind of knew stepping into it that it was going to be hard. Maybe not hard. It was just going to be completely new. To anything.
Brand new.
Yeah, brand new. I've never done that type of movement before. I didn't really know anything about the rules of the game. So I just was like, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to have a good time. And honestly, the reason that I chose to start doing golf was, one, I just wanted a new hobby. And also my boyfriend does it. And I wanted to enjoy it with him because he enjoys it a lot. And so I guess back to the kind of original question that you asked me is like, I was able to reflect on that like enjoyment piece of it. And just, I think knowing that I'm going out there not with the purpose to necessarily get better or to win or to get a low score, I'm really just going out to enjoy myself and have a good time.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Same. I'm the same way. Like if I'm not automatically good when I start out, man, sometimes I just
It's a hit to the
I'm like-
ego.
It really
Doesn't
is.
feel good.
It
Does
really
not feel
is.
good. Because honestly, there's some things that I've picked up on over the years that I didn't expect myself to be good at, and then I just like ping pong. Yeah,
Ping pong.
I'm pretty good at ping
hidden
pong. Not gonna lie. But I had no idea that I would be. So then, like when things like that happen, then I'm like, well, I'm just gonna be good at anything
Right.
and everything because I'm athletic.
Yeah.
Not true.
Doesn't always happen. Especially golf is such like a skill driven game, or like it's so technical where it's not purely athleticism that like gets you by. In like team sports, if you're like an athletic person, I feel like you can have relative success.
Yeah.
In some sports like golf, that are just so like technique and skill driven, and not that golfers aren't athletes, that's not what I'm saying, but it's less of like the run fast, jump high,
Right.
big strong, like, and it's so skill driven that
Yeah. I think a lot of them would admit that.
it makes it that much more frustrating that you're like, I'm this really good athlete but I can't do this skill.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
but I think that's also part of what like makes it enjoyable, right? Is the chase of refining skill and having something to get better at. Let's talk about your homework. I asked you to find some ways to connect with your values, and we call them values-driven behaviors. Let's just talk about each value and the way that you were able to engage with that value in real life.
So yes, thoughts are important. Noticing our thought is important. Understanding the feelings and sensations that we have in our mind and body is important. What's more important though is what we do with those things, what we do when that happens, the actual physical behaviors. And so your homework is going to be to come up with one thing for each of your values, one thing, one behavior, one action that aligns with each of those.
So I actually had a hard time because we did this in the session as well.
Yeah.
And I came up with some actions. And that was like really easy for me. I don't know if it was because of the environment that we're in and we were already talking about certain topics and it was just present on my mind. But going back and doing it again and trying to think of brand new actions that I could do was really hard for me. It was so hard. And I didn't even do it in like one sitting. It took
Right.
me like multiple days, or like there was one I was just driving in my car. I was like, oh, that would be good to add to my list.
Yeah.
So I guess starting with joy or enjoyment, we already kind of touched on that, but rather than playing sport or exercising for the purpose of being good at it, I'm more interested in doing it because it's fun. And the reason I thought this is the one I thought of in my car, because I just played a futsal game and we lose? We lost or tied, and I just like we didn't play very well, and I was like upset, and like for what?
Yeah.
It's like adult league. Like I literally pay to be in this league, and you don't win anything at the end. Like no one cares. No one comes to watch. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what am I upset for? Like I really like the people that I play with. They're a good time to be around. Like even the team that won probably doesn't even care that much that they won. So why am I so upset?
Yeah.
I think part of it is because like futsal is soccer essentially, and that was my sport. And so when I'm not good at that or like don't have a good game or don't win, like I think it's just like wired in me to be upset. So I'm kind of starting to stray away from futsal, soccer as much. I don't really play as much anymore, and just doing other things like golf. And I'm gonna start this segment, actually, a little teaser, where I go and try new sports that I've never done before.
Yeah.
Just kind of see how it goes. So there's that. And then, okay, community and challenge. I I had to put these together. But I want to do like more community events or volunteer work, or just go to things that are in alignment with what I value with for the Athlete Confidential, and trying to meet people that have the same values, or think the same as me, have the same long-term goals, or in like a similar space as myself. And I know of events and community events and, you know, volunteer opportunities that exist here in Oregon, but I don't go usually because I don't have someone to go with, because I don't know, there's not like a lot of people that are interested in taking 3 hours out of their day to go and to a watch party for like a documentary or something.
Yeah.
And the reason that I thought of that was because there was actually the Sports Bra, which I don't know if you've heard
Oh,
of.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, the Sports Bra is a all-female sports bar in Portland. They only show female sports, which is really cool. And they were doing this watch party for this documentary film that came out talking about some like very prominent female athletes. Anyway, I wanted to go watch it, and I texted one of my friends, asked if she wanted to go. She couldn't make it, so I just didn't go. And I was like really bummed, because I was like, dang, I should have just gone. Like, just go by myself. And then, so that's like the challenge part of it, right? Is just doing things on my own, even if I don't necessarily have like the support that I need or want. And just knowing that I would be fine by myself. And then the community piece of it is, because I'm going by myself, I have the opportunity to meet new people, talk to new people. I don't have like the comfort of someone that I know, so I have to engage.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna see some overlap in how you can engage with your value. That's totally normal. And glancing down at your list of values, because maybe I didn't remember off the top of my head, wouldn't you think that maybe had you gone, you would have some conversations that could inspire others and that would encourage growth on your end? So
Absolutely.
you'll see lots of overlap between like how your actions interact with your values. That's totally normal. That's good. It means that you're probably doing things right. Like, you're probably being your authentic self and being the person who you want to be. So totally normal to see overlap.
Yes, definitely. Okay, well, moving forward. Growth, really simple one. I want to read more. I need to read more. I've been, funnily enough, I think it's a sign, on Instagram, because I just love to scroll through Instagram, which is absolutely mindless. Sometimes I make an excuse like I'm working, like coming up with, you know, new creative trends, whatever, but most of the time I'm not. And I've been coming across these posts that basically talk about how good reading is for you, for your brain, for just like life and education. And I just don't really read anymore. I've always had a hard time reading as far as like focusing, but I realize like that's kind of part of it. That's how I'm gonna get better at it. Like,
It's a good challenge.
Skill, yes, it's a challenge. Good skill to learn, to help me grow, continue to educate myself, and just like keep the mind sharp.
Yeah, I like that.
And then last one, inspire or inspiration. So I actually found this quote again on Instagram. Get a lot of information from there. And it is by this Dutch author / inspirational speaker, I think. His name's Alexander, then gonna botch the last name, Heja. Something like that.
Sorry, Alexander.
Yeah. And the quote is, to inspire people, don't show them your power, show them theirs. And I thought that really resonated with me, because I think the way that I viewed my ability to inspire people for a long time was kind of just leading by example, which is part of it, and that's great. But then how am I actually, if the real way to inspire people is to show them how they can maybe do the same thing, or just show them what their own abilities are, how can I do that?
Yeah.
And so honestly, I don't really have like a specific answer for that, but it just like made me think okay, I need to start focusing on that piece of it
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. And how do you see that? Like, obviously, you just said you don't know. Maybe what are some ideas that come up with like the Athlete Confidential of what you're doing there? Like, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I really don't know. I definitely need to think about it more. I think a good start is the nature of the Athlete Confidential just being a platform for people to have the opportunity to share their stories and talk about themselves. And I'm trying to do it in as many ways as possible. Obviously, podcast is one way. I am going to start a video series. And then I have another series that I've been working on, and I just kind of spoke to an athlete about it, but it's going to be like a day in the life series.
Okay.
So then this person, they have complete control over how they present themselves, their story, and their sport to the world. So I'm literally just giving them a space to share it, but they're doing all the recording, all the speaking, most of the editing, and then it just goes on my platform. So that could work,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But I think also just being intentional when I speak to people and being really mindful. I'm very good at talking about myself. I can do it very easily. But I also like learning about other people. And so just being more mindful, like, am I really asking them questions, or is it mostly me talking at them?
Yeah. Or like, yeah, I like that a lot. I think that'll serve you pretty well as far as the Athlete Confidential goes, and your personal life too. Like, the more that we genuinely want to know, the more information we're gonna get, the better relationships we can have. So that's cool. I think that goes along pretty well with the list of values that you came up with as well, and how to live those out. How often would you say, if ever, you thought about your values before the session, and then how often during the last 2-3 weeks, however long it's been, how often during that time period did you kind of reflect on this?
How do you feel about all this? Do you have any questions for me to clarify, or?
I don't think I have any questions. I think it's interesting because I do feel like I'm a very self-aware person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are things that like I know, but I don't take the time to, sure, I journal, but I don't take the time to like be intentional about what I'm doing, and I don't know how to structure things.
Yeah.
So I think just like coming in, sitting down with you and having someone give me actual structure and just having a place to put these thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of organizing thought.
Yeah.
And creating like action plan.
Good question. I think we talked about this in our original session.
Yeah.
Is that like I've never really think about them.
Yeah.
Because, well, how often is someone just coming up to me and asking like, what are your values?
Right.
So I've never had to like necessarily think about it too much. I think the only time I really think about it in any context is if I'm going through a tough time, or morally I'm having to, battle with myself, like what is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then I might briefly think about my values, but not in such a black and white way of like, here they are, let me write them down and put them in front of me and
then deliberate and then make the decision.
So before the session, not much. In the last couple of weeks since our session, I think I thought about it a lot, actually, partially because I had homework to do, and partially because now that I have actually defined them and what they are, I'm able to make connections throughout my day, throughout my week, and be like, oh, that's why I feel this way, or that's why I do this, or that's why I don't feel comfortable doing this, is because of this value.
A couple things there. One thing that you said is that you maybe have considered your values in the past when you are in like a bit of a dilemma of like, what's the right thing to do. We can broaden that thing, like that question, and like come to understand that it doesn't just have to be like some dilemma of right or wrong, but every action that we take is a decision that either goes with or goes against who you're trying to be. So like we can use like the activity that we did in our session of like, I'm a person with this problem, I experience these thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and my body wants to do this about it. And then, but that's not the real solution, so I'm going to refer to my values and do this.
These are what our body wants to do in some sort of like safety seeking, short term, quick fix. Because this is really uncomfortable. Like, we don't want to have these thoughts anymore, and we don't want to feel frustrated and anxious and sad and mad and be questioning your self-worth, and you hate the feeling of like that gut feeling, and you don't like to feel like nobody wants to experience this. And so your body and your mind respond in conjunction with trying to get you out of those things with these, we call it like fix it behaviors, which is not a very good term for it because they're not the solution. They're not going to fix it. But referring back to these will. So if these are behaviors that take you towards where you want to go, towards being inspirational, towards stability, toward growth, toward seeking challenge, toward community, these are the things that are going to take you away from it. So we got to bypass those and head back in the right direction. And we want to think about values-driven behaviors.
We can apply that to literally every single action that we do. And yes, it is really helpful in times where it's a big decision, right? Or it's an ethical like dilemma or a moral question of like, what's the right thing to do? But we can, like I said, even zoom out from that and realize that we can apply that to every action that we take. There's the cheesy quote, I don't know who to attribute this to. It said, every action is a vote for who you want to become or something like that. But it's so true. And so we need to take stock of who am I trying to become? What's the best version of myself? And then take that action. So that's one thing that I got from your answer. Another is that you did the homework, which is good. Because
I'm a good student.
As you are, it's great. It gave us something to talk about in the next session. As much as I can sit here and blabber on about values and why you should do them and why they're important and how they influence our behaviors, like the onus is still on you as the client to go home and do the homework. I mean, this is just like anything else. Like, if you don't go and practice, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. And so, yeah, on the client, the responsibility is to take action and actually apply the things that we talk about in our sessions, which is why I give the homework. And then it's that leads us into our next session of like where to go based on some answers that I'll get, from their critical thinking or activities outside of our session.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you have any ways to kind of like inspire or push your clients to do the homework if they're not?
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds really silly, but sometimes I'll just like give out prizes. So it's like, hey, if you do this assignment and then you can show me and we can chat about it next time. Maybe it's like a gift card to like your favorite restaurant or like really simple things like that to get some extrinsic motivators. Because let's face it, like not everyone is just super motivated all the time to do the work. That's one really simple way that I use, especially with my younger clients. That is usually pretty useful.
Right.
Yeah, pretty effective. It would work for me. Like if you gave me $10 to Chipotle, I'm for sure doing homework.
Well, because I was just thinking about this. My last podcast actually that I released, we were talking about, you know, how do you motivate people who already, like, let's take student athletes for example. They already have so much on their plate, right?
Yeah.
They have their regular school homework that they have to do. They have practice. They have games. They have so many things that they have to think about, and then you add this other piece onto it, which is, yes, is important, but like, how important do they actually see it to be?
Yeah. A lot of times, if that's the case, a question I'll ask is, do you want to be better at your sport? Right. Usually folks are coming in here with some sort of problem that's stopping them from improving, or maybe even causing them to worsen at their sport. And so the question is, do you want to get better? Do you want to solve this problem? And of course, they're going to say yes. Well, 99% of the time, they're going to say yes. And then on my end, it's okay, well, then this is part of that process. Just like spending extra time out of practice, like doing some extra ball work or doing extra conditioning. Like, I know you're busy. And I know you have school, and I know you have social relationships to maintain, but I also know that you have 5 extra minutes of your day, and if you want to get a tiny little bit better today, then you can do this.
Have you ever had to fire a client?
I won't say that I've fired a client. I will say that I've suggested that they see somebody else who can help them better than I can. I'm not going to sit here and take someone's money that I can't help.
Right.
And take someone's time that I don't feel like I can really do a good job of what we're supposed to be doing. So I won't say I've fired clients, but I've certainly referred them elsewhere if I feel like I can't do an adequate job. Yeah, what they came in for.
It's not even necessarily your fault or their fault.
No, it's not a dig or...
Yeah, like some people don't work well together,
Yeah.
and some people do. So I was just curious.
No, that's a good question. I like it. I don't think I've ever been asked that. So yeah, that's cool.
Good. That means I'm good at my job.
Let's go. You are. Let's talk about after the session. Was there anything that like hit home for you? Like maybe your biggest 1 or 2 takeaways from the session?
I think, again, what we just spoke about is the fact that I had never really thought clearly about what my values are. And also just like, why haven't I ever done that? Like, I like to think that I'm a pretty like self-aware person. I also like to think that I'm someone who has strong like moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't I, I journal a lot.
Yeah.
I am very like reflective in my personal life. So why have I never sat down and like, oh, these are my values, because those are important things to have. And then I started to think about how I've been struggling a lot with my identity outside of sport, and then connecting that with my values and being like, okay, by having these values, I'm actually able to kind of reshape my identity and realize that my identity never really was being an athlete. My identity is what I value and who I want to be through those values. And yes, at one point that was sport. That was like the, I guess, path or the lens to look at my values through. And now that's just shifting.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. It's, I know from what we've talked about, it's uncomfortable, but I really do think this is a really cool time in your life. Like the transition is really hard, right? From athlete to whatever else you're going to become after that. And I think, yeah, you speak to the fact that if we get so wound up in our identity as being like Gabbie, the athlete, yeah, it can stop us from thinking about things that are really important to us as humans. And we kind of can stop nurturing those things. And then when either we leave sport or we're forced to leave sport, which happens a lot of times, we're left with this like big, huge question of who am I? And like the existential question that nobody wants to answer. And so, yeah, by taking the time during your athletic career to understand who you are, who you want to become, how that interacts with your athletic identity, it can set you up for success later down the road. And maybe you're just playing a little bit of catch up, but I don't think that that's far from the norm. I think that's something that a lot of athletes deal with. I'm not dissing you at all. I think it's probably like 90% of athletes do that. Probably 90% of athletes, if I asked, how often do you think about your values, would say never, just like you know? So it has been really cool to hear about your past as an athlete, your present in this kind of in-between stage, and then where you want to go. And I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Still figuring it out, but I
Yeah.
feel closer to it every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, before we got into this episode, you gave a disclaimer that, hey, there's not a lot of like prep work that went into this. We kind of like jumped into it. No clinical, what did you call it?
Clinical assessment.
Yeah, no clinical assessment, anything like that. So, how would you typically kind of prep your clients before?
Yeah. So before I meet with anybody face to face or virtually, I just send out a little Google form that has maybe like 10 or 12 questions of like, how old are you? What sport do you play? How long have you been playing? Describe your coaching situation. Describe your situation within the team. How are your like social relationships? How is your, like, just a bunch of random questions. Who are some athletes that you look up to? What are some of your favorite memories, to kind of get a feel for who this person is? I don't just ask them, hey, what are your top 5 values? We get into that later. But yeah, just to kind of round out generally who they are. And then before our first session, I'll usually chat with that person on the phone for just 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll kind of rehash the questions that are in the form, just to breed like a little bit more familiarity and comfortability, and to explain to them the process of how this thing works. Like, we'll come in, we'll chat, we'll usually uncover some problem. We'll talk about it. I'll give you some strategies. I'll give you some homework on those strategies, and then we'll come back and learn and iterate and learn and iterate. That's kind of how the general process goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just important to touch on, because again, we just dove
jumped
right
in.
into it. But which, to be fair, you kind of knew me before.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of, I guess,
Yeah.
pre-screening that needed to happen as far as just like the basics.
Yeah.
Do you ever get nervous before
Every session. Every
Really?
single session. Yeah. Every single time. And I don't know if that's just because I'm relatively young in this profession. But yeah, every single time. And I do my best not to show it, but like if I trip over my words or like something, like I'm so judgmental and like harsh on myself, because like I want to be good at this thing.
Right.
And so yeah, every time, every session.
How do you cope with that? Like, do you have anything that you practice?
No, I mean, I'm relatively poised. I don't think that I show that I'm too nervous.
Not in our session. I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
think.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think I'm relatively poised. I try to be aware of my body language and whether it shows that I'm like open, or if I'm like a little bit more closed off, and I'm like no one's gonna really like that session.
Right.
And as much as I try to match someone's energy, I know I'm not the most like exciting, like I said, golden retriever-y kind of person. So sometimes if a client comes in who's super bubbly, that can be a little bit scary too. But I just try to do my best to kind of match the vibe. And I also, I guess another thing is that I don't put the expectation on myself like to have the best session ever every session. You know, there are going to be hiccups, just like on the client's end. They might not have an answer for a question. I might not have an answer for their question right away. Accepting that I don't know everything and it's not going to be perfect every time takes a little pressure off.
Yeah, I think it must be hard to kind of like measure success with a client with something like this. It's not like performance. Like you can be like, okay, they lifted 5 more pounds today or whatever it might be. So how would you kind of like define a successful session or like multiple sessions?
It's mostly subjective. Like if I feel good about it, chances are it probably went pretty well. If I feel like it was a little uncomfortable, it's probably because it was. And learning to kind of accept that and roll with the punches is important. Also, sometimes I'll just ask, you know, like, hey, did you find our time together useful today? Or what did you find useful? And if they can give me something that they think they're going to take forward, then that's like a pretty good measure of success that, hey, at least we did something today.
I like that piece that you ended with, because I do that a lot when I coach.
Yep.
I always ask my athletes, like, what did you like about today's session? What did you learn? Did you learn anything?
Yeah.
And if there was something that you would like to never do again, what would it be?
Yeah. Ooh, I like the last one.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll give me a lot of feedback. Sometimes they won't. And I won't ask it maybe like every single practice, because that tends to be a lot, but maybe after a week long of practices, or if we particularly didn't have good energy out of practice, because then it helps me gauge kind of where they're at. Also, something I like to do and check in, I don't know if you do anything like this, is like I'll check in with how they're feeling emotionally, kind of how I asked you at the beginning of the session, like how's your mental health. I'll check in with my athletes, like, okay, scale of 1 to 5, everyone just put up a number. What's your energy level like today? And then I can gauge, like, okay, maybe we take it easy today, just have a little bit more fun, or maybe we can be a little bit more serious if they're really in check.
Yeah, definitely applicable to my workers. Usually the first question that I ask when they come in is just, how are you doing today? And it's a really simple question. And if they give me the good, like, then we try to expand on that a bit. And if they say, okay, then we try to expand on that and kind of get some answers. But usually you can tell by the way that they answer that question, kind of where they're at. And so we'll do a little digging from there and try, like I said, to meet them kind of where they are. And like you said, maybe if they're not in a emotional or like psychological state to be super focused that day, we might end the session a little early. I won't ask questions that are too pressing. So there's always some like play there for sure.
Yeah, a lot of factors.
Lots of social factors, all the stuff that client is dealing with outside of here. Definitely play a role in how it goes.
Okay, last question. Do you practice what you preach?
I try my best. Yeah. So the values thing, yes, absolutely.
What are your values?
Ooh, good question. So humor, which you might not pick up from the podcast.
Oh, that's a good one.
You have to be like,
I want to add that to mine.
You have to be like, it takes a little bit to get to know me, I guess. But humor is a big one. Fulfillment, which is kind of broad, but keeps me in check with like whether I am doing things that make me feel fulfilled, like my time on earth is worth it, which is like really deep, of like worth being here and being part of this. So that's definitely one. Relationships, which again is really broad, but I use that to cover my like family relationships, my friendships, and my romantic relationship. Physical fitness, it's just been a huge part of my life. I've learned so much growing up playing soccer and transitioning. Well, I still play soccer, I guess, when I'm not injured. Transitioning to like doing weightlifting and CrossFit and those kind of things. Those are 4. There are like a billion sub values, I guess, that I could list underneath those, but those are kind of the top 4.
Nice.
Yeah.
I kind of cut you off before you could get to, do you practice what you preach? But at least you have your values set out.
I don't practice everything I preach. I don't find most goal setting activities particularly useful for myself. Trying to think of other things that I don't do that I use with my clients. Yeah, I don't do a whole lot of meditation. I do some breathing exercises, but I don't sit there for 30 minutes to an hour. So, which are things that come up with clients. So, yes, I practice what I preach. No, I don't do literally
Every
everything.
specific,
Yeah, because if I did, I don't know if I would have much
No,
enough
yeah.
time.
No, that wouldn't make sense. I
Yeah.
just was curious to see how you'd answer that.
Yeah,
It's honest.
I like it. Yeah, I mean it's true. I don't have time to do all the stuff that we cover in here because, like I said, every session is going to look so different depending on what the issue is. Like whether it's a mental skills thing that we need to work on, whether it's life skills, like understanding who you are, whether it's like an issue, an interpersonal issue, like between a player and a coach or a teammate. So there's just so many different things that would be hard, I guess, to practice everything I preach. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just as I started the episode with something new that I'm going to implement in all of my
Okay.
episodes going forward, I'm also going to end with something that I plan to implement in all my episodes going
All right.
forward. Can you give us an affirmation for yourself?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So this this is kind of hitting me right now. Yeah, one thing that I'll give you some backstory before I
Okay, please.
yeah.
We
One
love
thing
context.
that I've always been like a really skinny person.
Okay.
Like I played soccer, I trained basically it's like I don't know, endurance athletes will get mad at me for saying it's basically an endurance sport. Yeah, there's like agility and all that and skill, but and so my like natural body type is a little bit more slender. And so coming out of like soccer and getting into weightlifting and CrossFit where everyone's like 5'8" and just jacked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always like fit in or feel super strong. So this goes back to your last question as well, of like practicing what I preach. I said I don't set goals, but I do set some like yearly, I guess we can call them goals, or like things that I want to focus on. One of them was like just self-belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of those accompanying like self-belief things is like telling myself like, you know what, I am strong, pound for pound. Like I am physically capable. My body is enduring. My mindset is tough. And yeah, I think when I have like a heavy lift now, it's like I'm a beast. Like I can do this. Which feels really good to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Thank you for putting it
Yeah.
out there into the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. You got
Well,
anything?
you have to give me one now.
I have to give you
Yeah.
an affirmation.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to think of it. If all my guests do this, I'm gonna have to think of a new
Okay,
affirmation for
okay.
every episode. But I'll do it for you because this was the first one. I might have to start telling people no. No, I'm just kidding. I could come up with a lot of affirmations
Yeah.
for myself. Okay. I would say for me recently, I'm good at what I do.
Heck yeah.
Hmm.
I agree.
And I believe in what I'm doing.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. Great. That's great. We
That
leave it
was
on
great.
such a positive note.
I really like it.
Okay. Well, Alex, again, thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah.
Lovely to
course.
have you.
Happy to come back whenever.
Yeah.
Just keep doing
Well,
this.
yeah. Maybe you should just be my co-host.
It's like a weekly. Yeah.
All
Always
right.
a fun time. Thank you.
Of course.
Yay.
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit before I stopped. So my last season I played was in England, and I was there for a whole season, so a whole year. The way that their season works is they have a full fall season and a full spring season.
Okay.
You know how in college sports here it's a little different. You have a primary season for maybe 3-4 months, and you kind of have an off season-ish. It's full on for a whole year. And so I was playing for my university while I was studying there, and I was also playing for a club team on the side. So I was playing for 2 teams. So it was just a lot. I was really overwhelmed with soccer, with school, finances, being
Mhm.
away from home, a lot of things that I was dealing with and couldn't quite cope with as well as I would have liked to. And I also didn't go into, I realize this now, I didn't go into it with the greatest perspective, attitude. My expectations were really, really high. When they weren't met, I just got upset instead
Mhm.
of trying to, or it took me a while to change my perspective. So
Yeah.
within that year, I basically decided I'm ready to retire. I don't think that I can handle this anymore mentally. It's not worth everything that I'm sacrificing anymore. I was also starting to age out of my sport if I wanted to continue progressing. I definitely could have gotten to a higher level than I was playing there, but I wanted to get to the highest level. And I just thought, with the record that I have now, the place space that I'm in mentally, and then what I want to accomplish down the road after sport, I just think it's time for me to let
Mhm.
this go. So at the time, it felt really good. I was very happy with that decision. I felt relieved, is what I felt immediately. And then shortly following that was just identity crisis, not knowing what I want to do, not knowing where or how to draw my confidence. I put a lot of self-worth into being an athlete and
Mhm.
drew a lot of confidence from being an athlete. And all of that just disappeared overnight. And I really didn't know how to manage that. And then stepping into this next phase of my life, trying to pursue a career, I could not get a job. It was so hard to get a job. And here I am with 2 degrees,
Mhm.
my bachelor and my master's degree. I have all this, I would say, worldly experience, life experience, playing sports my whole life and traveling the world to play sport. And just didn't seem to matter to anyone. And so that like amplified everything that I was already feeling is like, okay, I already feel like shit because I'm no longer an athlete. And
Mhm.
now I'm not even able to step into something else that feels valuable to me or of worth to me. And so I've pretty much just been dealing with that since retiring, which I finished last April was the last game that I played.
Okay.
So a little over a year
Going on a
now.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's been a lot of questioning myself, a lot of not knowing if I made the right decision, a lot of just not feeling like I'm doing enough, that I'm good enough.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then just grieving the sport as well. Just a lot of grief surrounding soccer. And yeah, that's,
I think it's at least a decent place to start.
yeah, absolutely. I feel good about it.
Cool. All right.
Sweet.
We can stop rolling.
Cool.